So we'll just give 2 more minutes before starting the introductions. So I think we can start, and by the time we are done with the introduction, more people may join. So I'm super excited by this evening webinar. Welcome. It's about technologies and gluten-free living, leveraging apps and technology to manage celiac disease. So we have two amazing speakers tonight. First, we have Jacqueline Quinlan, who attended the University of Rhode Island and received her Bachelor of Science in Dietetics and went on to University of Massachusetts Lowell, where she completed a coordinated program receiving her Master's in Public Health and finished 1,200 hours of supervised practice program to become a registered dietitian. She has worked in the outpatient pediatric GI space for 5 years and joined Boston Children's Hospital outpatient nutrition team in 2021. Her main patient populations include pediatric patients with celiac disease and inflammatory bowel disease. She's passionate about patient education, the relationship between diet and disease, and culinary medicine. And outside of her nutrition career, Jacqueline is a 200-hour certified yoga instructor. And Megan Donnelly is the Director of Health Communications at the Celiac Disease Foundation and a specialist in nutrition for digestive diseases. As a registered dietitian, she believes everyone deserves food that is both delicious and supportive of their health. Megan has an extensive experience in clinical dietetics, counseling, and the gluten-free food industry, as well as developing education programs for healthcare providers and individuals with celiac disease. So both of them will present their topics. We'll have then a quick announcement about a very upcoming webinar with Shar for college student, then a Q&A session that could either be by the chat or raising your hand, however you feel more comfortable, and then more conclusive remark and announcements. So please stick around until the end of the webinar. So I'm going to stop sharing to allow them to share their slides.
Okay. Does everything look good? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. We are really excited to get into some of the technology and gluten-free living apps and other things that our patients are using on a regular basis. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, I was curious to see how a lot of people are getting their information about the gluten-free diet and celiac disease. So I took a look at the iCare Celiac Disease Patient Registry at the Celiac Disease Foundation and found in this one survey with over 7,800 participants that there are a lot of people, majority of people getting their information online or from social media or from a foundation or support group. And that number is equal, if not a little bit more, compared to what they're getting from their healthcare providers. Just a quick note on the other category that tended to be people who identified like non-specialist healthcare providers, different things that were kind of one-off, not anyone significant. So I kind of grouped them together for the purposes of the slide, but really interesting that people in this database are identifying that the internet is where they're getting the majority of their information. There's not a ton of research on this, but there are a couple of studies that I wanted to highlight that this one is looking at Twitter, now called X specifically, and that most of the material on X is actually coming from people who are not part of the medical community. So you'll look up things like gluten-free and celiac, and they do get a lot of searches on X daily, but most of the information is not coming from the medical community, which brings the question of whether or not this information is accurate. It may be, it may not be, and it's concerning when people come into the office with things that are not true. I think we've all experienced that to an extent. There was another recent study by the Carlo Cattasi group looking at Facebook groups in Italy, the US, and India, and just looking at whether or not there was a significant amount of misinformation. And they looked at over 200 Facebook groups, kind of a lot when you think about, where people are getting their information. A lot of times they are in these private groups, and these aren't always moderated, or if they are moderated, they might be moderated by someone who is not a medical expert. In fact, that's very likely the case. So in this study, they found that the information provided in the groups was largely useful, but that about 13% of the time the moderators were approving misleading information. And some of the things specifically that they saw were alternate treatment information, things about camel milk and turmeric to heal celiac disease, and questions about beer, which we know is a little bit of a controversial topic when it comes to gluten-removed beers and gluten-free beers and what the difference is. I also decided to take a look in some of these Facebook groups, and these are some of the things that we've seen over and over again. I know that probably we've tried to bust these myths ourselves, but these things that we think kind of die after a little bit seem to keep coming up. So really largely issues related to cross contact, things about kissing, things about being in a bakery, some people thinking they can't even go near a bakery, not being able to walk down the grocery store aisles, having to replace every single item in the kitchen, grapes being washed with wheat flour to make them shine. That one always makes me laugh. It doesn't make any sense. So just things that we know are really unfounded and continue to live in these groups. All it takes is someone commenting on an old post, and then it's up at the top of the feed again. So that's just our investigation, I guess, but really just highlighting the need for this information to come from the medical community. So I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline, but I think we need to be informed about what patients are using and also empowered to kind of point them in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So we'll start by introducing some of the apps and platforms that are out there that our patients are using. So first of all, why would we want to direct patients to use these apps, or why are they seeking them out themselves? They're all serve different purposes, so I'll go through some examples, but generally speaking, some of these apps are restaurant finders. Some of them include grocery store scanners, so quite literally being in the grocery store, being able to scan a barcode and an app can tell you if a food is gluten-free. Symptom tracking and health monitoring, so kind of trying to narrow down, are my symptoms related to gluten exposure? Is there another variable that we need to consider? Meal planning and recipe sourcing, virtual education, and also social support like we see in some community groups. So these are just some icons here of some common apps and tools. So kind of going in order of which they're listed here, the gluten-free scanner app. So this app specifically is something that can be used similar to how I was describing scanning the barcode. In my experience, I think this app and the database that it uses is pretty accurate, but sometimes even maybe a little bit more restrictive than need be. So it's very often a question that we get in our gluten-free diet education class. Families and patients are just starting to learn how to read ingredients lists, identify gluten-containing ingredients, and they ask, can we use the scanner app? And my answer is typically sure. It's a nice resource to have in your pocket, but I also want people to feel empowered and educated that they know this knowledge on their own, and they're able to identify reading labels on their own, as sometimes I find these apps to maybe even be a little bit more restrictive than need be. But I guess it's better to be that way than the other way. Spoonful similarly is an app that has a scanning device or scanning feature to it. And it's instead of just being focused on a diet that needs gluten-free, you can identify other diet restrictions if needed and find products in the grocery store, scan the barcodes in the grocery store. It is an app run by a group of dietitians, so similarly find it to be pretty credible and also really helpful for patients maybe who are exploring the low FODMAP diet. I'm often recommending that app for that reason as well. Find Me Gluten-Free is my personal favorite app. I use it myself often, and it works nationally, internationally, and kind of covers restaurants that have gluten-free options. So definitely recommending it to patients and families, but giving them the caution that it is a consumer-driven app. So something that the feedback is left by other people with celiac disease who are kind of leaving feedback or reviews on their dining experience. And so I think everyone should still do their due diligence when ordering out at restaurants and asking appropriate questions to prevent cross contact and identifying the gluten-free options that are appropriate. But it is a nice resource to field what restaurants to maybe are a little bit more successful. And it also highlights if restaurants are dedicated gluten-free. So that's a really lovely feature as well. And to piggyback off of that, Atlee is another app that's in this space that I don't have as much experience with, but really is used in a similar fashion by identifying restaurants that have gluten-free options. My understanding is the people running the app are reaching out to restaurants themselves and uploading the database themselves. So it's maybe a little bit more regulated by the information that they're getting from restaurants, whereas the gluten-free, Find Me Gluten-Free is more consumer driven. Gluten-Free Watchdog is a blog, a dietitian who's local to Boston. She tests gluten-free foods and identifies if there's any contamination, which can sometimes stir up big conversation in the celiac community. So keeping brands honest and identifying if there's gluten exposure in brands is important. So her work is really valued. And then lastly, My Symptoms Food Diary, also on the screen here as an option for tracking symptoms. So pretty surface level overview of these, but just to show some screenshots here of some of the features. So with the gluten-free scanner app and Spoonful, seeing the grocery store scanners, you have the screenshots here of the barcodes, so just getting on the side of the box, scanning that, and so you'll get the message no gluten detected or possible gluten detection. It typically brings up the ingredients as well, which is nice, so you can do a secondhand review yourself, and you have the package right there anyways. So you can move on to the next slide, Megan. And then for the restaurant finders, so the Find Me Gluten-Free, Atlee, Gluten Dude, again, kind of falling into the same category as each other, but each database is based on different, some more consumer driven and then some that are more from the company itself. definitely important to include that there can be outdated information. So I definitely see on the Find Me Gluten-Free app, scrolling through, reviews that were left 4 or 5 years ago, might not be super relevant today. Maybe practices have changed, maybe the way food's handled has changed, ownership, management could have changed. So always important, again, to kind of ask your own questions when ordering gluten-free food in restaurants. You also might have somebody who just doesn't manage a gluten-free diet the way that maybe we would recommend them to. So maybe cross-contact isn't something that they're taking into consideration in their review. And that would be something that we would want to encourage our patients to be taking into consideration. So taking all that into consideration when making informed choices. And then we also have blogs here, so lots of different people who are writing things on the internet, some maybe who are more qualified than others. So I think that's important to take into consideration for all of these resources is, what is the source of information? And so as Megan described at the first slide, there are a lot of outlets and a lot of maybe authors from different backgrounds that provide this information on the internet. And so, as I mentioned, for Gluten-Free Watchdog, credible source, somebody who's been in the field, somebody who's registered and licensed. For more lifestyle and recipes, I think that that's a little bit different in the sense that people can, alter recipes and make modifications for their preferences, but as long as the base ingredients of a recipe are gluten-free. Now, hopefully whoever's writing the recipe and claiming it's gluten-free is double checking that, but I think it's important for people to be informed as they're reading recipe blogs as well, to know what ingredients perhaps do contain gluten and where a swap needs to be made. And then the symptom trackers. So this covers the My Symptoms food diary, the Monash Low FODMAP app, and CaraCare. These apps are great options, especially for maybe a patient who has overlap of celiac and IBS, and we're trying to identify, are we having gluten exposures or is something else going on? Do we need to pay attention to FODMAPs? Do we need to pay attention to lactose? So kind of using these to suss that out and track symptoms and, maybe notice some patterns can be really helpful. I specifically really love the Monash Low FODMAP app symptom tracker. So not necessarily specific for celiac disease, but there are a lot of different categories to track data. So people can track their stress levels. People can track what they ate that day, if they're reintroducing FODMAPs. So there's a lot of really niche things to keep track of in that app for the patient with IBS. And I think kind of the summary here is, those are a lot of tools. There's some pros and cons to all of them, but I would say for the most part, in my experience in my practice, I find them to be valuable and recommending them to patients, using them to help with their care. So you want to help your patients use tools in a positive way. They are available to them, and I think just asking patients if they're using these tools at follow-up visits can go a long way, kind of hear about their experiences with the tools. Maybe if they are finding misinformation or questions that are maybe different than information that they were given from clinic, I would hope that they would share that and try to debunk that with you. Perhaps having a compiled list of preferred websites, apps, blogs, some of these tools that we used tonight and offering those when patients ask for them could be a good idea. And really just trying to vet the source of information. So, instead of it being a random blogger, trying to maybe direct towards something more evidence-based, a foundation, which I'm sure everyone on this call is doing. I know everyone here is more medical background and pretty evidence-based themselves, but just kind of in the community, maybe not so much. So And definitely recommend trying these apps out yourself. I think that just in terms of getting familiar with them and being able to explain how to use them to patients, I find sometimes if I just say, oh, use this app, then, it may go in one ear and out the other, versus if I show some screenshots of how it can be helpful or specific functions within the app that might be helpful, it's more likely for them to be used. And one other thing that I would add here too, is just that some of these apps are, you pay for them, some of them are subscriptions, some of them are free, so taking that into consideration as well. Excellent. So moving into social media. There is a lot on social media. So some positives. Social media is accessible. It's inexpensive, quick, and accepted by most patients. Pretty well known. I would say all of my teenagers, adolescents, young adults are all on social media. But some challenges with social media is the content is not generally by experts. We have that term influencer. So, maybe someone who has no medical background or kind of just information that they got from somebody someday. That's kind of what they want to promote online. If they have a large following, that information might set sail. So that can lead to misinformation and fear mongering and bullying and shaming. And so kind of to your slide, Megan, with all of the different call outs to those myths that maybe are being found online, I think that's, the origin story of where those all can come from. So short form content, I would say this is a more widely used form of content now. And these platforms are predominantly used by younger audiences, especially 16 to 34, really split between female and male users. So probably touching a wide range of patients, again, especially if you work in the pediatric setting or with young adults. More popular in urban and suburban populations, really, again, attracting those influencers, people who find creative outlets online and more interested in visual content, lifestyle topics. So the slide with the video we're going to play as an example. Oh, I'm not hearing the sound. I know we did during our mic check.
Hi, I'm Dasha Weir
There we
from
go.
the Children's Hospital Celiac Disease Program, here with question of the day. If my child has a wheat allergy, is he more at risk of having celiac disease as well? The short answer is no. Celiac disease and wheat allergy are caused by very different processes in the body. Wheat allergy is an IgE-mediated process, and celiac disease is an autoimmune disease. Having food allergies does not put you at higher risk of having celiac disease like having autoimmune diseases might.
Awesome. So shout out to Dr. Weir for that short little clip, but short and sweet, and a great education message sent across to the viewer who kind of got the point of the video. I think for especially people with short attention spans, those short and sweet videos work really well. Then there's also long form content. So other ways to get that, really different platforms using different things here. Still popular amongst younger adults, but also maybe a little bit of older adults as well. Again, relatively equal distribution for males and female users, and really can get maybe more information in this way, as with the short clips. It's kind of one or two takeaway points where now we can maybe dive into details a little bit more with long form content. So this can include interviews, maybe with healthcare professionals, Facebook Live Q&A sessions, live cooking sessions, detailed information about research and clinical trials, and promoting community events and fundraisers. So kind of what this webinar is. I know Celiac Kids Connection does a ton of work in this area, and different foundations, Celiac Disease Foundation. So lots of good resources available to us from a lot of people on this call. And social media best practices. So if you can, get active on social media. Boston Children's Hospital, we do have our own TikTok channel for our celiac disease clinic. So that's fun and being able to contribute to that. Also, some clinics are on Instagram. So Vanderbilt Celiac Center, I actually follow them on Instagram, and U Chicago Celiac Center. So I'll follow them too after this. And really just trying to leverage your expertise, maybe commenting on other posts that are out there, collaborating with other institutions, maybe working with other companies, influencers to send messages to the public and make patients aware of the accounts that you trust and follow. And then lastly, we'll touch on AI. It's a really kind of maybe newer topic, booming, and more information on it. So if I'm being honest, just from a personal perspective, it's something I'm slowly getting into. I was a little taken back by the idea when I was first introduced to it, but now I understand all the benefits behind it, and I'm using it in projects and idea organization and stuff. So I do think it's a really wonderful tool, but I definitely have some maybe reservations when thinking about using it in clinical practice. But actually, this paper that's on the screen here was reassuring to me. It specifically just looked at ChatGPT, which I understand that there's probably 100 to thousands of other AI platforms available now, but specifically this paper looked at ChatGPT and basically put in a prompt to come up with a gluten-free meal plan. And the reviewers of the information that ChatGPT spit out found it to be 100% accurate, which is great. But at the same time, it was very vague and non-personalized. So I think when making recommendations to patients and families, I definitely like to personalize them a bit and, understand what the patient needs are. And so that is definitely taken away when just kind of relying on ChatGPT. It also can be helpful for creating handouts, just coming up with ideas for social media, recipes. But I think that maybe more studies are going to be needed to identify just largely if these platforms are going to be providing accurate information, which is kind of a theme amongst all of these different tools we talked about tonight. So.
Right. Thank you, Jacqueline. Before we get into the Q&A, we're just going to do a quick shout out to an upcoming event on April 16th. This is our annual college summit, the SSCD annual college summit, and it's available. You can find the link. It's provided here, but it is on the community events page and the webinars page for the link to sign up. This is something that would be a great opportunity to share with your patients and join as well as providers. We always kind of view this as a good opportunity to learn alongside your patients, but we're going to cover everything from transitioning to college to managing accommodations, accessing safe gluten-free options, and just working through some of the challenges that we know college students face. So this will be on April 16th. At 8 p.m. and it is open to providers and patients, and important to know that there will be scholarships available for students who participate live only. So for the live students, there will be information about how to apply for those scholarships during the webinar. And this is only available to students who attend live. So with that, we will move on.
Yes, thank you so much to you both. And yes, the webinar about college is very important. If people can share on social media and with their patients. So yes, so I was surprised about, not surprised, but it's true that most patients are looking at the internet and getting their information from the internet because they meet with us sometimes once a year for the GI and a few times a year for the dietitian, but they live with celiac disease for all their life, 24/7. And but in terms of having all of those Facebook group with the misinformation and the patient association, I always refer my patients to the patient advocacy group, the patient association. But do you feel that there could be a need to kind of have a similar way of the Facebook forums, but in the patient association page? Have you seen that in with Celiac Disease Foundation, Beyond Celiac, National Celiac association, or would it be like Facebook, super hard to moderate all of those comments?
Yeah, so from my perspective, all like closed groups are a little bit hard to moderate. I think from our perspective at the Celiac Disease Foundation, we try to just promote the accurate information, and we also host virtual events to kind of reiterate those concepts that we might put on social media. So I think the more opportunities you have to educate people, the better. And yeah, it's really challenging because you can't police every single thing out there. I have some groups that I join them all. I sneak in there. And some of them are really well moderated and others are just chaos. So I think it would be hard to say there's like something everybody should join, but you can be the source of the good information, and that's the approach we take.
Yeah, I think that we try to have a touch point with all of our families when they're newly diagnosed. They take a class at our hospital, and just as an example of a visit I had earlier, it was, they took the class, they got all the great information, and I met with them today, and I think just a baseline anxious family and just wanted their child to feel better and maybe did a little bit more than they really needed to in terms of what we recommend. Like, we threw out all of our pots and pans. We revamped our whole kitchen. I'm like, oh, okay. I definitely did not recommend that in the class, but it's kind of, I think, just sometimes that information that is found on independent research that ends up feeling a little scarier, and that can drive some decision making when even though the right resources were given too. So I think that's just, it's out there, so people are going to find it.
Does someone else have questions? So I have other questions, like for academic center who have like social media accounts like Boston Children, Vanderbilt. Do you think it's like hard to manage with all of the comments, question, or is it on a day-to-day basis relatively like easy in terms of workload?
Yeah, I definitely don't run our TikTok account. I know that it has slowed down a little bit, kind of our social media presence. But I think that the Celiac Kids Connection piece is really involved on social media and very responsive, and people sign up for those events and are in that Facebook group. And I would say that's kind of our biggest resource right now through the hospital, at least. But bandwidth wise, I think it's honestly a lot to maintain a social media account and like have it be just really successful and consistent.
And just, I think you can start small. Things we've seen that work that seem very simple are just like Q&A posts. Like someone submits a question and you type an answer and put it on a social media graphic, and it takes 5 minutes. So it doesn't have to be videos that are really detailed all the time. Sometimes you can also, if you feel like you want people looking at this information in different formats on social media, I mean, you can just record a quick presentation and refer to it. It doesn't have to be something that's always like an Instagram or TikTok video.
Great talk, Megan and Jacqueline. I'm curious, how applicable do you think these applications are for, say, non-English speaking patients and families? Do you think there are options for them?
That's a really great question. I haven't played around with the settings on them to see if maybe there's an option to change the language. I do recall once in clinic, I had an Arabic speaking family. They were actually here internationally and planning to go back home within a couple of months. But at the time there was a language barrier, and I had them using the Spoonful app in the grocery store because they couldn't really make out the ingredients on the foods that they were buying. So they were using that app, and just with the color coding of it telling them that green light means gluten-free and red light means it's not, that was universally understood. But I haven't played around with the settings to see if the actual full language in the apps can be changed.
Thank you.
I have a question on, this is a social media question. Your take on, like, sorry, I keep turning my video on and off. Sorry about that. The So you post something on Instagram and people will then comment on it. How much do you feel it is worthwhile to like engage with people in a comment section where like the amount of information you can give gets even smaller? So like the person who is like throwing out their pots and pans, if you put on something about like cross contact in the kitchen, they're like, no, we had to throw out all our pots and pans. Do you feel like it's worthwhile to be like, you actually don't need to do that? Or does that get too kind of into a fight almost with patients and potentially like turning them off to your Instagram? Like, where do you think the line of that is?
Okay, this is a hard one. So I think from my experience, it's best to not get involved in the comments too much. You can reply one time, and if the person continues to drive things, negativity in the comments, like what I've seen work well is responding in their DMs with like the evidence, like you can link to the papers or you can link to whatever it is that you want to point them towards. That seems to work a little better, and you're kind of like taking it off. The comment section, I see nothing wrong with moderating comments. I think if something is really crazy, you should take it down, because that's how things get perpetuated.
Okay.
So if you know, but sometimes you can reply and you say, oh, I didn't know that. So it, you just have to kind of
And sometimes it's just in the range of opinions too. So it gets like, okay, that's another way to go. I don't know if I would do the same thing, but it doesn't necessarily bridge the gap of that's wrong. Like,
Mhm.
but it's, yeah, I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you. I like that. The doing the DMs is good.
Yeah.
And I think too, when people are asking questions personal to them and their health, it's so hard for us as healthcare providers to even think about answering it on social media without knowing like the whole picture and the background. So I think you can very easily tell like an influencer person kind of in the comments replying to those things, giving it attention, whereas I think some of us would just be like, that's a personal question, and maybe talk to a doctor or provider to get a better answer for you. So
And there is a discussion in the chat about podcasts. So someone recommended You Had Me at Eat podcast, and there's Raising Celiac through Boston Children. So do you recommend some podcasts to your patients?
Yeah, I mean, both of those great choices. It kind of depends on the topic they're interested in. Like, I think the Celiac Project is a great podcast for gluten-free lifestyle and living with celiac disease, like on a day-to-day basis. So I think there are a lot of dietitians who have podcasts. There are some doctors that have podcasts, and then there are people who live this every day. And I think they're all valid voices. But yes, the Celiac Project, Raising Celiac, You Had Me at Eat, all things that I listen to and agree. Yeah, good resources.
Oh, there's also Gut Health.
Oh, yes, another good one. Yes.
And these are more about like how to live with celiac disease on a day-to-day basis, how to eat in a well-balanced way and stuff like that.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, on Raising Celiac, that is, we do interviews with healthcare providers typically, right, Jacqueline? I mean, that's historically the format there. Celiac Project and You Had Me at Eat those are podcasts by people living with celiac disease and sharing their experiences, but also providing high quality information. So it just kind of depends. I think sometimes on the gut health podcast, it's sometimes not as celiac focused, but very good information on that as well. And yeah, they did a great interview with Lori Wellsteed from University of Chicago recently. That's worth a listen.
And I have one last question. How do you feel that the app with the barcode that tells you if it was gluten-free or not, is it like really well updated if they change the ingredient, or would it take like a month or two before the app gets changed?
Yeah, so in my experience with working in the food industry, this is something where the information might not be reflected in real time. So a lot of it depends on companies pooling their data, and there's different companies that do this, but the majority of them use, 2 or 3 companies where they enter all their product information. And a lot of these apps will pull from those data sets. Sometimes they pull it very often, and sometimes they don't. When they've gotten a lot better, but when a lot of these apps first came out, people were pulling the data, and then they would email me asking if it was correct. And sometimes, it would take me a while to get through it, and I would find errors, and then you're just like frustrated because it's concerning when people are using these in real time and they might not be the most updated. They have gotten better. And I think a couple of things to keep in mind with something that is, certified gluten-free, it's probably going to pick it up pretty well. It's going to read that package and it's going to know. It's just some of the other ingredients get a little tricky sometimes. And I think it's always worth telling your patients to scan it, see what it says, but then also confirm that the information is correct according to what's on the package in front of you. Because if it's reading an old version of something, it might have a little thing that's incorrect, and you just want to be aware of it.
And I've seen just playing around with it, if I scan something that says it's certified gluten-free, but it also has an advisory statement on it saying processed in a facility that manufactures wheat, it picks that up and says it's not safe to eat. So sometimes I find them to even just be maybe a little bit more restrictive than need be.
Okay. But that's still a good way for our patients who may have less like literacy to kind of like have a better way to identify some product. But I understand the concern about not being necessarily up to date. Does anyone else have more questions?
I think this is Erica, and I, being a influencer and then also involved in the community as well, one of the biggest issues I think that we're facing in the evidence-based world is there are so many endless groups on Facebook, on Instagram, that people have founded. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of nonsense in there, and it's repeated over and over again until it's a truth. And if you go in there and try to talk about evidence-based behavior, you get kicked out for banned. So I think that that's one of the biggest issues facing kind of social today and tech as it moves forward from being these larger social pages on Instagram to more group focused. So, how is there a way to move forward knowing that these groups exist? They're huge and they're spreading misinformation regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's really hard because, yeah, you don't want to get into a fight with someone and get kicked out of the group, right? It's like it's hard. And I think that's why, content should come from experts. Like, I think more of us should be doing this. I mean, Erica, you have a big platform, and I know that you care about the quality of the information that gets shared on it. Like, that's something that you built your whole platform on. So I think that people need, like, our community needs to be leading this a little bit more. Some people are doing it, but this is why I feel so strongly that we've got to have more medical providers out on social media, and not necessarily in the comments fighting with people, but just being a good source of information. And then upon that patient entering your center, they get sent to the right place first. And, maybe it kind of it will help undo that cycle of like just scrolling through these groups and finding things that are not true.
Thanks, Megan. That's such a hard one. And you guys are doing such great work. We need everyone to put in their part, and it's so exhausting to do it, but it's kind of where the patients are, unfortunately, nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I echo everything Megan said. And I wish that I had more bandwidth to have more presence on social media, truthfully. And also just I would need a whole training course on how to make a TikTok video personally, but that's probably not as hard as I think it is.
And it's sad because there's still like huge regions in the United States that do not have access to good like celiac care. So they get to like those social media instead of like seeing a provider. So I think also emphasizing that our patients should go with the proven patient associations that work with celiac expert is the key. I see that Ritu turned on their camera. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was trying to hold back, but I think I'm going to dive in. So, Erica, I totally agree with you that this is a lot of hard work. So I'm hearing, this institution does this, that institution does this, and, everyone is doing something or other. So perhaps instead of all of us dividing each person having their own, University of Chicago does this, Boston does this, somebody else does this, maybe everyone should stop reinventing the wheel and try and do it together so that then there is something, then you're not spreading yourself that thin. Then those who are really good at this do it. And those of us who are not that good at it, we stay behind and listen to the experts who know what to do. And I also think, there's a lot of noise on social media on many different platforms that make the noise. The people who probably make a lot more noise are the ones who don't have the correct information. So perhaps having a list that's shared with everyone, because I did not know a couple of these, and I've been in this space for almost 40 years, and I think that having some sort of a central place that does it. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, we're all talking the same thing, that we all need to do this, but we're all doing it in our own little fiefdoms. So maybe we all just have to get together, and Megan, you can lead that charge.
I mean, I do think it would help people. I agree. And
Yeah.
even if there was, I don't know, I'm just making this up right now, but content that we just make and it's generic for everyone and everybody's centers can share it. I think it's a really cool idea, and Vanessa's going to kill me, but
I was just gonna
yeah.
say, oh no, Vanessa.
Vanessa left. Vanessa, she's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys are really doing such a great job. It's just it's how can we get SSCD again as a body to give at least guidance, or maybe it's a literature or something. It's just how can we involve the people at the top who really are putting their time and effort into this disease state, to work with those who are hand in hand with advocacy, so we can all kind of fight on a larger scale. Yeah, didn't want to poke the bear, but it's something that has been consistently said over like the past, 10 to 12 years, is how can we all work together on this?
The bear has been poked, Erica.
It's true.
And I'll just, I was going to say, I can just throw in that, like, if there were some generic materials, also, like, you could get people from all the different centers. Like, we want to do a promotion on this, so we get Ritu to do it. We want to do, information on something else. You get someone from another center to do it. So then there's all this cross-pollination that we're all sharing each other's content, but it is also a consistent message.
Yeah, because everyone is doing something or maybe doing the same thing in 10 different spots, and we're just spreading ourselves really thin here.
Yeah, and just on that note, like, I think it's important that people see their providers out there. Like, I think that gives a lot, that makes people feel really good to be like, wow, that's so cool that my doctor is doing this. And just from my perspective, some things we've seen work really well is when we post a quote from one of you. If it's simple, like if we have an article we saw, we get a quote from someone, and people, the engagement on those posts are always great. So like I said before, it doesn't have to be a video every time, although those are very fun. But like really people do like seeing the medical community content.
We got to think about this one and think about it seriously. Sometimes we do the webinars, we say things and maybe we don't follow through. So Erica will keep us honest.
Yeah.
No, yes, that's a great topic for the SSCD Executive Console, and yes, absolutely. I'm gonna put in the last slide. So let me just. All right. So, in fact, we spoke about the SHAR webinar, who's going to be on April 16th, so not next week, the week after. And then we'll have a webinar on June 4th about the Columbia Symposium and DDW. There will be a celiac disease symposium at Columbia University on May 1st and May 2nd. So it's on a Thursday, Friday. And then there's going to be DDW. So for those who cannot attend, we're going to aim to summarize the key abstract and the key findings in that webinar on June 4th. Most webinars are recorded and posted on the SSCD website for members. We will open up a few webinars to the general audience to attract more people. And I'd like to thank the committee for the SSCD webinar. Telly Chung, who interacted earlier, is a new member, and Jackie Josen also, who is on the call tonight. And in terms of other announcements, so the SSCD has updated their website. You should have received a link to kind of like reactivate your membership and pay your due. But if you have any questions about that membership with the website, please feel free to contact through this email. And also, please tell your colleagues to join the SSCD. There's lots of good information for celiac providers. As you saw, for the social part and also the scientific part, we're trying to balance our webinar. There will be an annual meeting and a reception at DDW on May 5th. It's going to be at the Hilton, and there's going to be the voting for the new executive committee members. So for the upcoming treasurer and secretary. So if you're a member, you'll be invited to vote. And we are also excited to announce the travel grants that could also cover for DDW, for the trainees. So it's about celiac-related research at national or international conference. So each award is $1,000. For this round of application, the deadline is actually April 10th, so it's coming soon, next week. The eligibility is to be either an undergraduate student, a graduate student, postdoctoral, the fellows, medical residents, or to be an early career medical associate or a dietitian, an NP, within 5 years of degree attainment, and also to be an active SSCD member. So it's another good point to join the association and become a member. You need to have an abstract related to celiac disease that is accepted for presentation at the conference in 2025, not only submitted. And there's a QR code to register if you're interested. And then we should have another slide. Okay. And so yes, and as you saw, our membership is open to medical, scientific, allied health professionals. There's lots of benefits, including webinar, grant, society statement, publication review, mentorship, and there is also the celiac disease unit recognized program that allow your center to be fully recognized as a high output celiac disease unit. And feel free to check out the website at the Celiac Society. So thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you.